California leading the charge, saying the 15 others joining him, the other states that is, trying to stop President Trump from violating the Constitution, insisting the president cannot divert money appropriated for other purposes to build more border wall. He says Congress has the power of the purse. Here's Senator Rob Portman from Ohio a bit earlier today here on America's Newsroom.
I think the court's likely to kick it back to us and to say under the National Emergency Act, there will be an opportunity to vote on this. I do support the president on securing the southern border. People in Ohio care a lot about the drug issue right now because opioids have devastated our state. Well, guess what? 90% of that heroin's coming across the southern border.
Chief White House correspondent John Roberts picks it up from there, from the North Lawn. Hey, John, good morning.
Bill, good morning to you. It was Public Citizen, a local group here in Washington, D.C., that filed the first suit yesterday against the president's emergency declaration. That was filed in district court here in Washington, D.C. But now, as you mentioned, California leading a total of 16 states in launching a state-level challenge to the president's emergency declaration. Here's the Attorney General of California, Xavier Becerra, talking about why he's doing it.
In every respect, the facts prove that Donald Trump is acting outside the law in declaring an emergency, but he's also acting outside the law in trying to raid pots of money that have already been allocated by Congress.
The president predicted this would happen when he announced the emergency declaration on Friday. Today, taking aim at California's failed high-speed rail system. In criticizing the legal action, the president tweeting, as I predicted, 16 states, led mostly by open-border Democrats and the radical left, have filed a lawsuit in, of course, the Ninth Circuit. California, the state that has wasted billions of dollars on their out-of-control fast train with no hope of completion, seems in charge. The failed fast train project in California, where the cost overruns are becoming world record-setting, is hundreds of times more expensive than the desperately needed wall. Now, the president expected the emergency declaration to be tied up all the way through to the Supreme Court. In the meantime, though, he can start building new wall immediately. He does not need an emergency declaration to spend the following money: the $1.37 billion that he got from Congress, the $601 million in the Treasury Forfeiture Fund, and money that is currently in the Department of Defense Drug Interdiction Fund. Now, he also does not need an emergency declaration, but it will take a little bit longer to reprogram $2.2 billion in the DOD budget from where it is now over to the Drug Interdiction Fund, and he may get a little bit of a challenge from Congress on that. The only money that he needs the emergency declaration for is the $3.6 billion in the military construction budget. So the president will get a grand total of about $4.5 billion without even touching any of the money that would be involved in the emergency declaration. It's not the $5.7 billion that he wanted from Congress, but it's a lot closer than 1.37. Congress, though, is also going to try to block this whole thing when they get back from the recess next week. They're going to introduce legislation to try to handcuff the president. Bill?
John, thanks. John Roberts running all of that down from the North Lawn. Thank you, Sam.
For more on all this, let's bring in Hugo Gurdon, Washington Examiner's editorial director. Hugo, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So they're going to try to stop him since he's made this announcement. Where does this go?
Well, I think that there's a very clear case that the states run by the Democrats will make, and that is that Donald Trump is arrogating the power of the purse to the executive when the Constitution puts it in the legislature. He has in this declaration probably gone further than in taking power to the presidency than all of the other emergencies, and there are 58 of them still running. But I think there's some confusion. It's often said, or it's been said frequently, that because Donald Trump said he didn't need the emergency declaration, that somehow strengthens the case against the emergency declaration. I don't think that's true at all. What he has said is that he can take the money without the declaration, but it doesn't mean to say that there is no emergency on the southern border, and that'll be obviously for the courts to decide.
Meanwhile, transitioning to 2020 here as we wait to see what happens next with that. Hugo, Bernie Sanders has officially thrown his hat into the ring. He is running, and here he is making that announcement this morning.
And we intend to run a campaign which stands up for working people, whether they're black or white, Latino, Native American, Asian American. We are going to run a campaign which tells the people on top that their greed has got to end. They cannot get it all. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. We cannot continue to have three people owning more wealth than the bottom half of the American people.
Was an interview released with the Vermont Public Radio this morning. So he's officially in, and President Trump's reelection campaign has responded, Hugo, and they said this: Bernie Sanders already won the debate in the Democrat primary because every candidate is embracing his brand of socialism. But the American people reject an agenda of sky-high taxes, government-run health care, and coddling dictators like those in Venezuela. Only the president will keep America free, prosperous, and safe. And there you have it. The list grows longer.
Yeah, the point that the Trump campaign just made, I think, is a very important one, and one which is actually a problem for Bernie Sanders. Back in 2016, he was the clear alternative to Hillary Clinton. But he himself has acknowledged that the entire party has moved in his direction. He calls it progressive. Other people call it socialist. Basically, all of the major candidates who are now declared candidates have endorsed the Green New Deal, which is clearly about central command and socialism. So he doesn't stand out nearly as much as he did 2 years ago. And I think that, rather like Elizabeth Warren, perhaps his day has already come, and that the party is much more likely to choose a younger socialist.
And now they try to differentiate themselves from each other. Kamala Harris making it very clear what she does not want to be called. Listen.
I am not a democratic socialist. I believe that what voters do want is they want to know that whoever is going to lead understands that in America today, not everyone has an equal opportunity to and access to a path to success, and that has been building up over decades, and we've got to correct course.
So here we go. Hugo, final thoughts.
Yeah, look, it made me laugh when I heard her say she wasn't a democratic socialist. It made me think that in a spasm of candor, she was admitting that she's an undemocratic socialist. She's clearly endorsed the Green New Deal. She's very much on the left. She is a strong candidate, and the California primary moving up to March gives her a very strong position. All
right, Hugo Gurdon of Washington Examiner. Appreciate you coming on the program this morning. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Hugo. Major developments now. Jussie Smollett case now. His lawyer saying there are no plans for the actor to do a follow-up interview with Chicago police. 2 brothers arrested have been released without charges, saying Smollett hired them to stage the attack. Matt Finn back on the story at the corner where the actor says it happened. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Bill. Well, this morning, Jussie Smollett's crisis manager tells us they just don't know if today is the day that Jussie will talk to police. They indicate he'll continue to communicate with detectives. And there is a scenario here that if Jussie stops cooperating, police could seek a warrant for his arrest. But we're also being told that if he stops cooperating with police, this case really could stall. Jussie Smollett's attorney says anyone who's claiming that he had anything to do with this alleged assault is a liar. In an interview with ABC, Smollett said he feels he was the target of this alleged attack because he strongly criticizes President Trump, who he simply referred to as 45. According to CBS, the 2 Nigerian brothers linked to this alleged hoax told police a much different story, that Smollett was allegedly upset that a death threat letter sent to him about a week before the attack with the MAGA return address did not generate enough attention. The brothers claimed Smollett paid them to carry out the fake assault, and they even gave it a practice run. And to set the scene here, over my shoulder here is the residential apartment where Jussie Smollett was staying. The subway is a few blocks north, and then right here is the sidewalk where those 2 men were walking. So police released the still frame of the surveillance video that ultimately helped them track it down. And right above that sidewalk is a camera that we believe is the camera that police used to track down these men, although police will not indicate if that is the exact camera. And this morning, police have stopped calling Jussie Smollett definitively the victim. Now they're beginning to refer to him as the person who reported this incident. Bill.
And back on the case on the streets of Chicago. Thank you, Matt. Sandra.
Now to this Fox News alert. President Trump with a strong warning for Venezuela's disputed leader, Nicolas Maduro. Trump saying socialism is dying and a new day is coming for Latin America. Reaction from a member of the House Armed Services Committee, Florida Congressman Mike Waltz will join us.
Also, Andrew McCabe says he is willing to testify before Congress about the FBI investigation into the Trump campaign. Brand new details and reaction on that from Congressman Jason Chaffetz next.
The bottom line is you can't trust Andy McCabe. He's lied 3 times under oath. He was fired at the FBI, and he's currently under investigation by the Justice Department.
Mentioned this about an hour ago. Fox's alert, the longtime Trump advisor Roger Stone ordered to appear in court on Thursday after he apologized to the judge that's presiding over his case. He posted a picture on social media slamming the judge, shown here with a caption, quote, an Obama-appointed judge who dismissed Benghazi charges against Hillary. Well, last night, he and his lawyer released this statement, quote, please inform the court that the photograph and comment today was improper and should not have been posted. I had no intention of disrespecting the court and humbly apologize to the court for the transgression, end quote. Stone saying the post was interpreted incorrectly and denied that he was threatening the judge. So that's on Thursday, 2:30 in the afternoon.
Former acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe facing calls to now testify before Congress after revealing he opened a counterintelligence investigation into whether President Trump had been compromised by Russia.
Back to the investigation of potential collusion between the campaign and Russia, right? So through the fall, these are topics we've been looking at. During that time, the president has been publicly undermining the investigative efforts. He's talking about it as a witch hunt. He's talking about it as a hoax. So it's clear to us that he's not happy with what we're doing.
Let's bring in Jason Chaffetz, former Utah congressman and a Fox News contributor. Good morning to you. So what is your takeaway from what you are hearing? What are we learning from him?
Not a lot, because I just don't think he can fundamentally trust him. I mean, the Inspector General in a 39-page report, February of 2018, highlighted his transgressions, his lack of candor, essentially lying, 4 documented cases of that. It goes to the Office of Professional Responsibility. They do the unprecedented thing, and they recommended the actual firing of this person for his inappropriate actions at the Department of Justice. So I don't trust him in what he's saying whatsoever. I do think he should come before Congress. It's up to Lindsey Graham to do that, but he is a very discredited witness at this point.
Lindsey Graham's words, we will have a hearing about who is telling the truth here. Do you think that's going to happen, by the way?
It should, but you know what? It should have happened 6 months ago. There was no reason why between Trey Gowdy and John Ratcliffe that, you know, with the lack of leadership on the Republican side of the aisle in the House, you know, Jordan, Meadows, Gowdy, Ratcliffe, they all wanted to see this guy, and they wanted to see Rod Rosenstein, by the way, but leadership wouldn't back him up, and consequently they never did see him. So I think Lindsey Graham has the political guts to do it, and I think it'll happen.
All right, and here's more from Andrew McCabe on the reasons for opening the counterintelligence investigation into Donald Trump.
We had a number of very concerning things that we were considering at the time. One of them was the fact that the president, in our view, had gone to extreme measures to potentially negatively impact, possibly turn off our investigation of Russian meddling into the election and Russian coordination with his campaign.
So obviously he has shut down all the talk that he decided to go at this himself. This was his team, the recommendation of his team. They discussed this with lawyers. You're obviously having a reaction to that, Jason.
No, look, and the proof is in the pudding. The president didn't actually do that. He says he was under a lot of pressure, but there is still no evidence and nothing that was mentioned in these television interviews of any underlying precursor to justify what they were doing. He fails to mention, nor does he ever get asked, about the influence of the Democratic National Committee, the millions of dollars that they spent to generate this document in order to, you know, disparage the president during a presidential campaign. He fails to even get asked questions about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that Hillary Clinton raised that ultimately went into his wife's political campaign. There are a lot of questions that this guy was not asked in these interviews that I'm sure Lindsey Graham will ask.
Finally, I got to ask you about the whole process by which he said he went to congressional leaders. He told them about the investigation. And he went on the record as saying, Jason, that no one in the Gang of Eight objected to this counterintelligence investigation of Donald Trump. He said, I told Congress what we had done. No one objected. His words.
Yeah, no, I think that's something that Lindsey Graham specifically should be asking him about. I also think that Lindsey Graham and the prosecutors within the Department of Justice should be challenging Mr. McCabe. What he did on 60 Minutes is he shared information that is obviously classified. He should be prosecuted for that. You can't just go into the meeting, tell the world what the FBI was informing the president, the discussions that were in a classified setting. You can't do that, even if it's secondhand knowledge. And And you have to be prosecuted for that. We have this same problem time and time again, inappropriately sharing classified information.
Well, we'll see where it goes. We know that Graham is already calling on McCabe and others to testify over this. We will leave it there for now. Jason Chaffetz, thank you.
Thanks.
There has been another bizarre twist in the Jussie Smollett matter, what his lawyers are saying about a follow-up interview with Chicago police and the impact on the investigation that may have on the case coming up.
Plus, a massive gun heist after dozens of pistols and rifles were swiped from a hardware store. Now the ATF is joining the hunt to find those suspects. Gun heist in Arkansas. Around 3 a.m. Friday, they broke into an Ace hardware store, stealing 79 guns in a matter of minutes, including pistols, revolvers, and rifles. They returned 2 hours later, but this time tripped the alarm and took off. Now $5,000 is being offered for any information leading to their arrest.
New questions about the Jussie Smollett case now. The actor's lawyer is saying he does not plan to talk to police in Chicago again. A spokesperson for the actor denying that, saying that his attorneys will keep a dialogue ongoing with Chicago police. My next guest has been watching this story from the beginning. His name is Don Babwin. He's a reporter with the Associated Press. Don, how you doing? And good morning to you today. What's the next?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm well, thank you. What's the next page in this story, would you say, Don?
I think it all depends if and when Mr. Smollett comes in to talk. The police have made it clear that they want to talk to him again after interviewing or interrogating the two brothers and serving a search warrant at their house or apartment. And now something happened, or they've developed some information that they feel like they need to talk to Mr. Smollett again.
Okay, so the men who were questioned, they had come back from Nigeria. They put out a statement. They were released. Apparently, they were cooperative witnesses, at least based on the reporting, and that stood up so far. There was a suggestion over the weekend that they produced a receipt from Ace Hardware, which shows how they got the rope for the noose. Is that a fact, or can we say that, Don?
No, the police, I don't know that for a fact. What we do know for a fact is these two men were picked up at the airport. They were characterized as persons of interest. Then something happened where that changed to suspects. And then Friday, I guess it was, they were released and the police said they were no longer suspects. So something happened either in that interview or that search or both that the police even said that has led them in another direction, or they're looking at something else.
If he does not concede to an interview with police, what would then happen? Would you get some sort of grand jury indictment, perhaps, if it were to go that way?
There's been there's been unconfirmed reports about that. We haven't confirmed that. Nobody really quite knows how the police will respond to him not coming in to talk again. And I don't know that he has said, his people have said that he will not talk. So it's all kind of in his court right now, whether he wants to come in or will announce he's not coming in. Then the police have a decision to make on what they're going to do next.
Yeah, we're watching a timeline here. We're just up at February 18th from the other day. The brothers spoke publicly. They said they're not anti-Trump, and they consider themselves Americans. They've been here a long time, etc. How are locals reacting to this story, Don? What do they think about their town? What's going on?
I think people are confused about it. I think most of the city was saddened that something like this could happen in Chicago and downtown, and maybe they didn't want to believe it happened. And then since then, there's been various questions. The police made it clear that they wanted Mr. Smollett's phone records, and he was refusing to give them. Then he gave them, but they said, I don't know if they said it wasn't enough, but they might ask for more. So I think now people maybe don't want to believe it happened. But I'm not sure of that.
Yeah. Let's see what happens next with police. Thank you, Don. Don Babwin, Associated Press in Chicago. Nice to talk with you. Thank you for your time.
Sure.
4 years after she left for Syria to join ISIS, an Alabama woman pleading with authorities to let her come back home.
I don't know. I thought I was doing things correctly for the sake of God. And when I came here and I saw everything with my own eyes, I realized I made a big mistake, and I know I ruined my future and my son's future, and I'm deeply, deeply regretting.
Why that woman there is now asking for a second chance.
Also, it's been a rough rollout for the Green New Deal. The proposal's sky-high price tag sparks a debate among lawmakers. Coming up.
And President Trump urging Venezuela's military to abandon the Maduro regime, saying a new day is coming for Latin America. House Armed Services Committee member Mike Waltz will be here to weigh in live next.
He would rather see his people starve than give them aid.
Half past the hour now here in New York City, 11:30, where an Alabama woman who left home to join ISIS now wants to come home. Her name is Hoda Mathana. She's married 3 ISIS fighters in Syria, and she has an 18-month-old son. She is now speaking for the first time to the Guardian newspaper, saying that she quickly realized the mistake she made and tried desperately to escape.
I've been literally planning to get out for months. I got caught twice by ISIS, and I was so scared I broke my phone. From what I heard, if they were to read my messages, I would have been killed.
So she could face major jail time if she comes back to the U.S. after repeatedly calling on Muslims to launch deadly terror attacks.
Well, after a rocky rollout earlier this month, the Green New Deal still giving critics plenty of fodder and putting supporters on the defensive. The non-binding resolution is being labeled aspirational. Doug McKelway live in Washington with more this morning. Doug?
Morning, Sandra. The rollout of the Green New Deal on February 7th was a lesson in how not to launch the most ambitious transformation of the U.S. economy in history. The problem basically centered around an FAQ segment posted on Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's website. It said, quote, "We aren't sure that we'll be able to fully get rid of farting cows and airplanes that fast," meaning in 10 years before they lose the climate change battle. It also promised, quote, "economic security for all, unable or unwilling to work." Well, a torrent of ridicule followed.
Well, if the Green New Deal took hold, I think our grid would stop.
It sounds like a high school term paper that got a low mark.
Within hours, Ocasio-Cortez's office deleted the FAQ from her website. Then the following Saturday, her chief of staff tweeted it was an errant FAQ posted by mistake. But the night before, another advisor to Ocasio-Cortez offered a different explanation.
No. She's actually tweeted it out to laugh at it. If you look at her latest tweets, it seems that apparently some Republicans have put it out there.
Well, Professor Robert Hockett there was mistakenly referring to a parody of the FAQ, which was tweeted by a right-wing commentator by the name of Mark Dice. Dice inserted into the real document a guarantee for massage chairs and a call for American men to recycle their urine. That's a joke. But to Republicans, the real document served as a parody in and of itself, so they published it in the Congressional Record. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who does not like show votes, announced a show vote to basically embarrass Democrats. Still, 67 House Democrats signed on to the Green New Deal, as did many Democratic presidential candidates, but with a little bit less ambitious support.
Seeing it as an aspiration to do better than we're doing now.
Aspirational is how many of them are now terming it. This week on Special Report, we're going to be breaking down some details of the Green New Deal. Tonight, we'll take a look at wind and solar, contrast it to Germany, where it works great when the wind blows and the sun shines. Sandra, back to you.
We will look forward to that all week. Doug McKelway, thank you.
A new day is coming in Latin America. It's coming.
President Trump sounding off in Venezuela during the speech in Miami, condemning socialism and calling for a peaceful transfer of power in Caracas. This while urging Venezuela's military to back the opposition leader Juan Guaido. Michael Waltz, a House Armed Services Committee member, joins us from Orlando. Sir, how are you? And welcome back to our program here. Pretty strong argument yesterday. What do you think is the next piece of this story in Venezuela? How do you get Maduro out? Because so far he has been resistant, Michael.
Well, I commend the president for a very strong speech. You know, number one, he's going after now the military. The assets of the military leaders that have sided with Maduro. These are assets that they've stolen from the Venezuela people and hidden offshore. So hit them in their pocketbook. Number two, I think he rightly called out Cuba's role. Cuban intelligence is propping up the Maduro regime. They get their the Cuban regime survives off of Venezuelan oil, and I think they could be in real trouble if Maduro falls. But then more broadly, Bill, he called out socialism. Socialism often starts with a lot of happy talk. We're seeing that here in the United States in our political system of taking care of everyone. But at the end of the day, in order to give so many free things to so many people, you have to take from someone else, and the ruling class ends up deciding winners and losers, from healthcare to education to energy to, across our entire economy. And pointing that out and the failures of socialism is obviously going to have a big play heading into 2020, as so many Democrats point to that as the way forward. Well, let's look at Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, and so many other places where that's failed.
Okay, you mentioned Cuba a couple times there. Here's the Trump soundbite from yesterday. Guys, go ahead and roll this when he mentions that.
Maduro is not a Venezuelan patriot. He is a Cuban puppet. That's what he is. We seek a peaceful transition of power, but all options are open. If you choose this path, you will find no safe harbor, no easy exit, and no way out. You will lose everything.
So let's see where this goes, Michael. Two other stories I'm going to hit on quickly. This is a little-known story that many Americans would not be aware of, but we're holding about 150 French citizens in Syria who joined the fight on behalf of ISIS. It's described as at least 50 adults with 150 total. We are urging the French government to take these people back. And the French government saying we'll look at it on a case-by-case basis. This is pretty sticky. What's the resolution here? She gave an interview with The Guardian. What comes of her?
Well, I think there needs to be consequences. Look, you go over there to join, even if you're providing just support, a terrorist organization that is massacring civilians, that is launching attacks all over Europe, that's inspiring attacks in the United States. One way or another, directly or indirectly, you have blood on your hands. I think there needs to be real consequences for anybody who supports a terrorist organization overseas, period.
Would you take her home? What happens? Would there be a trial?
Well, I think I think there needs to be a trial. I think there needs to be justice, and I think there needs to be consequences. If she comes back here, she needs to be entered into the American judicial system for material support to a terrorist organization. And I hope that's what we see play out.
Okay. Congressman, thank you. Michael Waltz there in Florida today, out of Orlando. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thanks so much, Bill.
A search is currently underway in Australia.
We're unsure the whereabouts of these two males. We're not sure what's happened to them, and we're concerned.
For two young tourists missing on a backpacking trip, the leads investigators are now following. Do prosecutors have enough evidence to try Kelsey Barrett's fiancé for her murder? We're following breaking developments in a Colorado courtroom on that story next.
Australia now searching for two missing tourists from Great Britain and France. They disappeared while backpacking across the country, and their belongings were found on a beach north of Sydney, including inside of a rental car. There was some material in there, too.
Items belonging to the 20-year-old British national and the 21-year-old French national were found here on Shelley Beach, which included towels, sunglasses and car keys. Unfortunately, we weren't able to locate those persons, so today, again, the search is continuing. Both in the air, in the water, and also by land.
So the 20-year-old is from the UK, the 21-year-old is from France. They have not been seen since Sunday, again, just north of Sydney, Australia.
Breaking this hour, Patrick Frazee due in a Colorado courtroom today for a hearing to determine whether there is enough evidence to try him for the murder of his fiancée, Kelsey Barrett. Kelsey was last seen on Thanksgiving Day. Police have still not found her body. Andrew Cherkasky is a criminal defense attorney and a former Air Force JAG officer. We welcome you to the program, Andrew. What can you tell us about this case? What we know, what we don't? We covered this story daily, as the last sighting of her was as she walked into that supermarket, and a surveillance video showed her walking in, but it never showed her walking out. What do they think happened to her?
Well, I think this morning we're going to find out that there are 3 strikes that they've already got against Patrick Frazee. They've got some motive. They were engaged, and there's claims that there was a debate about custody. They've got him at the crime scene, it sounds like, that it happened at her home. That's something that the prosecutors are anticipated to lay out today. And third, they now have an accomplice, somebody who, after the fact, was helping get rid of Kelsey Barrett's cell phone and has already pled guilty to obstruction of justice type of charges. So they've got quite a mountain of evidence already against him, and we're going to hear more about that today.
And that's Crystal Kenny. Is going to testify at the preliminary hearing. What can you tell us about her? She's the 32-year-old Idaho nurse. She pled guilty to 1 count of tampering with physical evidence, about which you're talking, in regards to Barrett's disappearance. And she has said she will testify against Frazee.
About a week ago, she cut a deal and pled guilty to what's easily referred to as obstruction of justice, that after the fact, she participated in hiding or getting rid of the cell phone of Ms. Barrett. That idea that somebody's helping afterwards, and then also giving information about what happened during the alleged murder. So she cut that deal to cooperate and participate fully going forward. She's not going to be sentenced until they fully vet her and get all the information they can from her.
Investigators have said that they believe she is not alive, Andrew. What has brought them to that conclusion?
Well, what we're hearing is that there's something in the home that tells them that she was not only murdered, but murdered in that location. Any case where you're dealing with a alleged murder but without a body is very difficult. You have questions of, is the person really dead, and who did it? Prosecutors today are expected to lay out to the judge, and judges in these preliminary hearings often really want to know why the prosecution believes, to the extent they do, that the person is deceased. That's going to come out today.
Well, they have not found her body. How difficult does that make this case for the prosecution?
Well, anytime you have a case without a body, it's more difficult because, number one, the defense is always going to go to the idea, is she even dead? The second is going to be, if she's not dead, or if she's dead, then what evidence do you have that it was the person who's sitting in the defendant's chair? It does make it more difficult, but where you have motive, where you have evidence that it happened at a certain location that the defendant has access to, those cases aren't that difficult to prove as long as you have that forensic evidence that gives you that.
Andrew, I've got some new information coming into us right now. As we mentioned, that we could be getting it at this hour. We are. 3 new charges have been filed against Patrick Frazee, Kelsey Barrett's fiance, pictured there. Tampering with deceased human body. It's a Class 3 felony. Violent crime, cause of death. And forgive me, I'm just reading this straight from the courtroom this morning. Violent crime, used weapon.